morning and good afternoon, wherever you are. I'm Marianne Makar, and I work as an advisor with the PIP, the Participatory Infrastructure Project, which we will be talking about right now, and which is actually coming to an end this December. And I also work on another project, which is the capacity building through urban infrastructure development, which is also in Egypt as well, yet in with a little bit of a different focus. Um, just to give you a background of what we are, who we are, and what we're doing. Egypt is a country of more than 110 million inhabitants. We have 27 big governorates, and we have more than 200 cities that are further divided later on into smaller areas, whether they're like districts or like countryside. And we definitely have a lot of challenges related to urban planning, and specifically into managing how urban interventions and challenges are faced and planned for or intervened with on a local level. Um, so this is just a background. PIP works mainly in Cairo or Greater Cairo region, Cairo, Giza, and Al Ubaid, and we work mainly on implementing infrastructure projects based on a bigger developmental plan that is localized on area level, not even a city level or a district level. And it's been developed over the years, even from previous projects that we've been developing some sort of a tool that's somehow similar to CityWorks, but it's more focused on our context, and it's called the Local Area Development Plans. With this, um, we've seen, like through our projects, we've seen challenges that we are facing mainly with our national partner. And it's because we always have a detachment between what's happening on the national level and what's happening on a local level. So we can see sometimes great plans, strategies on a very national level, but never get translated into the local environment and the local context. And when the SDGs came out, it even became worse because the government needs to report on even international agendas, and it's becoming even more complicated to translate those very international agendas into the very local level context. With this detachment between the two levels, we thought of the LDPs, the local area development plans, and specifically on how we can use the SDGs as a source of helping us to identify gaps, needs, and urban issues that can put into our local area development plans objectives for interventions, objectives for development, objectives for and goals for moving forward, and they become the drivers somehow leading how the local area development plans would work out in the end. So as you can see, we're focusing on how the national level deals with this issue. So we didn't focus on a certain city. And we've done a lot of consultation sessions with CityWorks, specifically because their approach is quite similar to ours in terms of planning. And we've done also some consultation sessions with our national partners. And eventually we ended up with having a consultant working on a tool to be added to the toolbox of the local area development plan, trying and approaching how to read the city, how to visualize the city locally in the eyes of the international agendas, and to see practically how we can put specific and measurable objectives that we can work on and eventually report back on the international agendas. After developing the tool, we did one small pilot with real data, and also we did a training, a 2-day training with our national partners to give them an idea of how to use this tool and how to further develop it later on. just to mention as well, our main partner is the Ministry of Housing, Utilities and Urban Communities. And we work specifically with the General Organization for Physical Planning and the Urban Development Fund, both of which work on planning, developing plans, and also intervening in development projects with informal settlements or areas of urban upgrading. Okay. So just to give you a wrap up around how we approached this production of this specific tool, uh, we had to go through all the tools that exist somehow in order to understand what kind of goals exist, what kind of indicators exist, what kind of measurements exist, and how different tools try to visualize the city status somehow, which identifies the gaps eventually. So we did look at the Sustainable Development Goals and their indicators. We also looked at the Sustainable Development Strategy developed by Egypt, which is supposed to be like the localization on the national level for the SDGs. We looked at the City Prosperity Index developed by UN Habitat, and we looked at the Local Development Compass, which basically looks at housing adequacy, economic value, social welfare, and economic well-beingness. In comparison to those, we also looked at the urban nexus approach, and we looked at the CityWorks toolbox to understand mainly how it is approached methodologically and what kind of suggestions are put there in order to have measurable indicators and measurable items and how it is measured quantitatively and qualitatively. So in terms of quantitatively, after looking into those indicators and trying to see which indicators exist in different agendas, which are more important, which are more focused on, which are easier to measure, what kind of data they require, and what kind of indicators are missed out in this process. We also looked at locally how Egypt looks at data and how they collect data. And we do have our census center, but also other than the census center, we have the urban observatory developed by UN Habitat in the General Organization for Physical Plan. And they do develop like information cards for the sectors respective to different cities. And we try to look at those, like the data that exists in order to compare it to the indicators that we feel to be quite important, and to see how we can link both together in order to make sure that we're measuring the right indicators against the right data, or connecting them together, and eventually seeing where the gaps are, eventually looking at where we are missing some indicators, or what can be added to these information cards in order to enhance the performance of cities. Other than the quantitative data, we started to look at qualitative data, which is still quite missing or still quite deficient in Egypt. And maybe the tool somehow shed lights on this specific part, yet it's not still very developed. So it needs further development, and this will be actually one of the main lessons learned or things to look forward to further on. We tried to have the quantitative data on one side and the qualitative data done through surveys. So this was our suggestion, that whenever we're doing a city profile to identify the needs, we will have to do another survey with the same indicators or the same data that we're looking at, in terms of like questions to be done, put as a survey, get on the streets wherever the area is, do the survey through the urban observatory, collect this data and compare it to the numbers that we have. So we would have the official reports and reporting, and we would have qualitative data from the citizens, the people living in the area, to compare whether quantitatively and qualitatively the situation overlaps, or whether there are gaps in between what the people are reporting against what the officials are reporting. Eventually, the main tool that we worked on from CityWorks is, and the Excel will produce, once you put in the data from both sides, it will produce the SDGs wheel in a visual way, comparing both the qualitative and the quantitative. So you will see that there are two different colors and there are gaps between the colors. And then what we aim to do is that, first of all of this needs to expand. So we can't have like a 2 or a 1. We want all to grow. We want everything to develop. And also we need to see whenever the qualitative data is not coinciding with the quantitative data, which means that maybe the facility exists, for example, yet the teachers do not exist or are not of quality. The hospital exists as a building, yet the equipment is not there, or the doctors are not qualified. So this is how, or this is mainly what we would be using in our tool, the local area development plans, to help us later on say, okay, then this area needs to work on the quantity of hospitals, the quality of teachers, and maybe tourism, for example. And this is how we approached this whole process. So mainly the results that we developed is after we did have like 2 trainings with CityWorks, we did have consultation sessions, and eventually we came up with this tool idea over the past year. So we developed this tool over the past year. We did 1 pilot city. We got the data, the quantitative data only. We didn't get the chance to do the qualitative data and also compare both together. And we did 2 rounds of trainings, especially with the national government, in order to ensure that they understand and they put in their input as well as what to be measured and how it could be measured better. What we learned is that we saw a lot of acceptance and agreement from the government side to actually further develop this tool, and that they were the ones who were like, we need the training, we need to know more about how to implement this, because eventually they also report on the international agendas, so they will need it not only for our work as GIZ, but they will need it for their work as well. We still need to make more pilots, and we need to experiment more with having qualitative data in order to see eventually in real life, when the data is crossed or it's not coinciding, what could be done. Also, when doing the qualitative data, still some efforts needs to be put into formulating the questions to be able to somehow measure the right amount of information and make sure that the information that we're getting is not ambiguous and would still be measurable. Furtherly, this SDGs localizing tool can support developing our local areas quite well. They will help us put real, measurable, and clear goals and objectives whenever we're evaluating or developing an urban area, especially the existing ones, before even going into future ones that are like vacant lands. That's it from our side. I didn't go into the technicalities of how the tool exactly is produced, but we do have a soft translated English version of the tool that can be shared with CityWorks and can be put on their website eventually. We do have a full Arabic version, but I'm sure the English will be more beneficial. Yeah, that's it from our side. And any questions, I'm here to answer if I can.
Great, Marianne. Thanks a lot.